Welcome to episode 1055 of The Sleeper on the Bus. I'm Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Hoping it's not going to be too hot. You and I and our guests were talking about the awful weather in all of our locations. We won't bore you with that, but we will excite you with our amazing guest today. It is Eric Samulski of Tailgate Sports, the Catcher's Corner, Rotoballer, multiple FSWA award winner, and something about Air Dog in his in NBA Jam in his profile on Twitter. You can reach him on Twitter at Samsky NYC. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks. That's bordering on like that Daenerys Targaryen list of titles that you're giving me right there. Yeah. I'm always happy to be here, guys.
I was going to say, ask the question, which is higher total? The places that Eric's work can be found, or the number of products that Shaq is now pimping? Every time I have a commercial, Shaq's on it now. The general. It's like every other product these days, like there's Shaq in it. The guy is, got to be a billionaire at this point.
I think he just became worth $1 billion. Right?
It's insane. But every time I hear a commercial, Shaq's voice, I can either see him or hear him, and then you just ran through a whole title there. That's quite the intro.
Sadly, Shaq's the billionaire, and I'm nowhere near that.
You got to be getting close, right?
No? I think we're just one day at a time, just scratching and clawing closer.
That's progress.
I already said where you can reach on Twitter. Talk a little about what you do in the industry. You've had quite the emergence, culminating in 2 FSWA awards this year.
Yeah, so the FSWA award was for ongoing baseball series and best ongoing football series. The baseball series is a series I do at Rotoballer, which I'm still doing this year, called Pitchers with New Pitches and Should We Care, which basically just examines pitchers who are utilizing a new pitch or like a reshaped pitch in their arsenal, and just kind of breaking down if it's actually positive or not, if it does anything to make their arsenal different, if it helps certain other pitches play up. And then I'm looking at, I do a semi-weekly series on Rotoballer, also looking at the minor league leaderboard. So not just looking at like top prospects, but just looking at like who's performing really well in the minors right now and trying to get a sense of like what's their path to playing time, can they call up? And it's a little bit of like a kind of, it works sometimes a little bit of a hat tip to what Alex Chamberlain used to do over at Fangraphs of like the peripheral prospects, just because some of the articles, like the first article featured Jack Sawinski of the Pirates, and you're just like, he might get called up now because they don't have anybody else. And then you can find my sports betting stuff over at Tailgate Sports. I do a daily MLB betting guide that features kind of like the rundown of each day's games with some of the best bets. And, we're covering the NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs. So that's all over there as well.
Nice. Betting is becoming big. I haven't dipped my toes in on baseball betting. I have a hard time with baseball betting.
It's tough. I mean, I think like you think that you know a lot about baseball, and you think that you can adjust like based on the starting pitchers and based on the bullpens and stuff that like, in your head, you're like, oh, the casual fan might not know this. But then, as just any day in baseball can be drastically different than the day before for no rhyme or reason whatsoever. So, you feel confident in something, and then, it doesn't happen. Or, the best are like the over-under bets where you're like, oh, this game is definitely going to go under. And then all of a sudden 1 run scores in the 9th. And the next thing you know, it's a 13-inning game. And, you've been left in the lurch long ago. And I will say just one other thing. I just released a video on the Rotoballer YouTube account, when you can also find it linked on Twitter today, which was the first of my pitching deep dive videos that I did last year that I'm starting again this year.
Oh, nice.
I looked at Eric Lauer because he won the Twitter poll. So we're getting started back into those videos again.
Those are absolutely fantastic. Definitely go and watch those videos. I love those. Definitely go give Eric a follow again at Samulski NYC. Follow Jason at Jason Collette and me at Justin Mason FWFB. Let's dive in. We've got some FAAB to talk about today, but first, it's Rays Corner because there's lots going on with the Rays right now, and there isn't really much news outside of the Rays that we're not going to cover in our FAAB kind of section. So let's start with Kittredge is going to the IL due to ongoing back issues. This, we talked, I think, about this last week in terms of who might be next man up. But Jason, what is your feeling in terms of the Rays bullpen right now?
Yeah, and I was glad you reminded folks. We did talk about this last week and the concerns I had with Kittredge. He had lost some of his whiffiness, and with this ongoing back issue, now it explains why he wasn't able to finish off some of his pitches. The slider wasn't doing what it normally does. He had just lost some whiffiness to him. So he hasn't pitched since Wednesday. So this may be just a this week thing. If it's a minimum 10 days with it. So that'll be helpful. I think, honestly, the bullpen becomes matchup situations where it could be Brooks Raley if it's a tough lefty. Like we mentioned last week, let's say they do have the Yankees this coming weekend. I thought it was this current weekend, but no, it's Baltimore. But they could, if Anthony Rizzo's up there, maybe they bring in Raley. Jason Adams has certainly pitched nice. JP Fireeisen has pitched amazingly well out of the bullpen. It could be him as well. So they've got options. One thing they don't have, and even Colin Poche, another guy as well. But one guy who won't be coming back is JT Chargois. He actually has an oblique, a grade 2 oblique strain that he hurt warming up on his rehab appearance. So he was supposed to be on the way back. He's going to be out while he's on the 60-day IL. They just kind of pushed him back, and they called up Dustin Knight for filler. Dustin Knight. The only reason I bring up his name is because in the minors he likes to do a standing backflip when he saves a game. It's pretty impressive. You should check it out on YouTube. I don't see him doing it at the major league level. I also don't see him closing a game out at the major league level. Like he and Ralph Garza Jr. are like the end of the bullpen type of situation. But
did we lose Jason?
We may have lost Jason. Looks like he froze.
All right. Well, we'll
it's cool. There we go. We're back. All right.
There
he is.
That was weird. Sorry. Everything froze. And then on the hitting side, Wander Franco's day-to-day with quad injury. If you watch the Friday night game where he got tagged out at home plate trying to score the go-ahead run in the 12th, looked a little awkward, and he sat out yesterday. He's not playing today as we're recording Sunday, and they're hoping he avoids the IL. Kevin Cash said some of it's been lingering for like a week plus with it, and they said some of it's playing on the turf at Tropicana. Get a new stadium, please. And then Yandy Diaz hurt his shoulder, also going into home yesterday on a slide. Didn't look great. He's out of the lineup today as well. Day to day, they're hoping he can avoid the IL. So bullpen's kind of uncertain, and then the left side of the infield is kind of uncertain for the next, at least for the next couple of days, as they hope both these guys can avoid the IL with it. So there's all the news for Rays Corner, at least on the bad side.
All right. Why don't we start with the bullpen, Eric? Do you have a favorite guy who could kind of emerge? There's obviously not going to be a one guy that's going to emerge in the Rays bullpen, but you have a favorite out of the group that you might take a shot on in FAAB this week?
Yeah, I mean, like selfishly, I'll pull for Jason Adam because I wrote a bold predictions article at the beginning of the year that said he'd lead the Rays in saves because there's always like a random reliever that emerges for them. I don't think that's going to be the case, so I don't think people should be bidding on him thinking he's going to lead the Rays in saves. But he currently leads the Rays bullpen in swinging strike rate at 17.5% on the year. When I watch him, I think he's really effective. So, I think that, and he has handled high leverage situations for them, in the 8th inning with middle of the orders coming up. So I like Jason Adam. Fireeisen has also been really good. I think I would put small bids in on all three of the guys that, Jason named, Jason Adam, JP Fireeisen, and Brooks Raley, because, you don't really know who it's going to be. And depending on the day and depending on, the spot in the lineup where the opponent has, people coming up, you might get a different person. But I think all three of them, if you need, a relief pitcher, are worth being used because of the frequency with which they pitch for the Rays, and the fact that they've been pitching relatively well. I will say if you're looking for just a 1 week thing, it's 2 games against Miami and then 4 games against the Yankees. That's not a knock on the Rays, but the Yankees are playing incredible baseball right now. So I don't really know how many saves you're looking at when you've got 4 of 6 games against the Yankees. So just, keep that in mind when people are setting bids, but also going forward too.
Yeah, they've used 21 different relievers this year. And they keep cycling through. And the crazy thing is Kittredge was actually leading the bullpen in innings pitched. He had 18 innings in 15 games. Was a little bit concerned about his usage rate already, considering how frequently he had been out there. I think we hinted a little bit about that last week. But yeah, it's just here comes some more guys. They've already called some guys up, DFA'd them. I'm looking through the name. I'm like, oh yeah, Javi Guerra did pitch in this bullpen at one point. Calvin Foucher did pitch in this bullpen at one point. Chris Mazza was here. Tommy Romero was here, albeit briefly. Robert Duggar, who I think is on his 3rd team now already this season. And so they've already started flipping through guys. I just don't know what else, who else they could possibly get up, because they had to add Dustin Knight to the 40-man roster because he wasn't on it. And they moved Chargois to the 60. And so that's how that took place. But yeah, it is what it is. And I think, honestly, it's just going to be a matchup situation. And I forgot, even Brett Phillips counts as a reliever because he's pitched twice.
Then I tend to agree with you guys, so I'm not gonna beleaguer too much. I can't even talk. But obviously there's nothing you can really do with Franco. You've just kind of got to hold on and see whether or not he gets put on the IL, whether you can put him on the IL in your league. But Yandy Diaz is likely a fringe kind of roster guy in most leagues that he's rostered in anyways at this point. Eric, would you drop Yandy Diaz for another, corner bat, considering he's day-to-day and we don't know if he's going to hit the IL or not?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you need. He's been a batting average help this year, which across Major League Baseball has obviously been really important. We're seeing batting average tick up lately. I know Jason tweeted something out about that as well. Just, that batting averages are going up. However, a 282 batting average has been really helpful to you. The power is not there. And, the runs and RBIs are going to be fine, but not great. So if you definitely need at bats, I'd rather drop him than take a 0. I don't necessarily think that you're going to be looking back at your season, bemoaning the day you dropped Yandy Diaz. So I think if you need the spot, I would move on from him. I would even maybe move on to somebody on his own team that we're going to talk about a little bit later on.
All right. We'll get there in a second.
I would add 2 things real quick, though. In the month of May, Yandy Diaz is hitting 267 with 2 homers, 10 runs, and 6 RBIs. So like you said, he's kind of there. But he was hitting 298 back in March and April. But one of the things that's quietly flown under the radar is just how bad Wander Franco has been in May. I don't know, maybe if folks have him on the roster, they understand just how bad he's been in May as he's tried to play his way through these leg injuries. But he's got a triple slash of 203, 243, 217 in May. So if maybe he should go to the IL, take a week off and reset himself, because it's been rough in May. And he looked great. And the thing is, he's still playing very well defensively. Looked great March, April, but May at the plate has just not been good. And how many times have we said it on this podcast? Hitters are nothing without their lower half. And if he's struggling with a lower half injury, it's going to carry over into his hitting. And it is. So maybe they should put him in the IL. Since he hasn't played yesterday, he's not going to play today. There's a 2-game head start. I get it. Like, you're going into they're going into New York next week. They want to have him available because they're 5.5 back, and you don't want to go up there and get railroaded, and then all of a sudden you're maybe 8.5 out by the end of next week. So I get it, but at the same point, he has really been struggling.
Yeah. Also, the reason why you don't do a victory lap in April is you never know what May is going to bring. For those of you who were victory lapping on me on Wander Franco last month. So, anyways, let's talk about some breaking news. Eric pointed out that Steven Matz left his start after only throwing 4 pitches. They're calling it shoulder stiffness initially. How concerned are you on this one, Eric?
I mean, anytime you hear shoulder, I think there is a certain level of concern. And then I think the other thing that intrigues me is, like, you know, we just saw, and I never want to speculate on a player's health, right? But we just saw the Cardinals place Tyler O'Neill on the IL with a shoulder injury that felt to me a little bit like hey, you need a break. Right? Like, maybe he could certainly be sore. He could certainly be in pain, things that guys normally play through during the year. And it's just like, we need to hit the reset button. You know, it's been a slow start to the year for him. And I think that you could see a similar situation with Matz, who I know, you know, people have been intrigued by the underlying metrics. And obviously, you know, the strikeout rate has been nice, but the actual surface level results have not been all that great. He's giving up a lot of home runs. So it might, even if it's not a major injury, might lead to an IL stint to just kind of like reset, get some things, you know, tweaked and ready, and, you know, have some time to get him back. So yeah, listen, you know, I've never been a huge Steven Matz believer, though. So I'm content to move on personally, just because I personally was never buying the breakout next level. So maybe I'm just overly harsh on, you know, his outlook.
You can't be overly harsh on Steven Matz.
Yes. Speaking of not buying the hype, Jason, what are your thoughts on this? Would you drop Steven Matz in a league?
I didn't even have him anywhere. So it's just, in all seriousness, no, though, I get it. I see why people were drawn to him, because they're, you know, the defense, you know, Matz's abilities to generate ground balls, the Cardinals defense, there was a lot to like. I was still out on him. And I'm not saying, I'm right on this, but I just didn't have him anywhere. But with shoulder trouble with pitchers, I mean, you're looking at, can you carry this for a minimum of a month? That's what it's going to take to get him back in a normal spot. Are you willing to carry him for a month? Given what he's done to date, no. So, you know, taking off my biased hat, no, he's droppable.
Yeah, and I am very invested in Matz and was very high on him coming into the season. In spite of like kind of some shaky early season numbers, through his first 5 starts, he only gave up 1 home run. The underlying numbers said he was fine, and that he was going to turn around. The last 3 games, he's given up a total of 8 home runs. Of course, that does not include today, where he only threw 4 pitches. It was in clear pain when I just watched the video when he threw that last pitch and left the mound. So obviously, if you're in a league where you can IL or want to IL, you might want to just hold on to him just so you can throw him on the IL. However, if there's any sort of roster crunch, if you're in a league where you can't IL him, if you want to make a move tonight and the Cardinals have not thrown him on the IL and you don't want to roll with an empty reserve spot next week, I completely understand dropping him. He is likely, in my NFBC leagues where we don't have IL spots, he's likely going to get dropped by me unless we get some sort of reassuring news. And we will talk about Matthew Liberatore and what people would be willing to bid on him in FAAB, even though he was optioned.
He may be right back.
If Matt's in the IL, he's going to be right back into that rotation. So,
and that's the rule. That's the thing too. He doesn't normally. There's a cooling off period, but if it's
10 or 15 days,
he can literally do the old man in the Simpsons thing. You know, and just walks right back. Because I can't
just rack up those freaking flyer miles. And
why would he? Probably hadn't even left Pittsburgh. He's probably still in Pittsburgh. So you know, just leave him there. But yeah, so I could. If they called him up yesterday to pitch, why wouldn't they just leave him up there?
Let's move on into FAAB. We didn't know that we were going to have a breaking news update, and so we put Isaac Paredes kind of at the top to follow Ray's corner. He's playing decently well. This is a former top prospect for the Tigers that the Rays acquired. He hit 2 home runs the other day. What are your thoughts, Jason, on Isaac Paredes? Is he a guy you'd be targeting in FAAB this week?
First of all, we have to do correct name pronunciations. His name is Isaac.
Oh, is it?
Paredes, and I only know this from the broadcast.
Okay.
So I've always called him Isaac. No, it's Isaac. Isaac. And so it was fun to watch his revenge game the other day against the Tigers because he now has 2 more home runs than Austin Meadows has. Suck it, Paul. He has his home runs because he had 2 off the Tigers, and Austin Meadows still has 0 and won't have 1 for a while because he's on the IL. So with Paredes, with talking about what we said earlier with Diaz or Franco, if either one of those guys goes to the IL, this is the guy that's going to take that playing time. He was the guy that came in last night. Paredes was to replace Diaz when Diaz came out of the game. He's got the flexibility. He truly could play any of the 4 infield spots if needed. So he could get in there. And at some point, even when those guys come back healthy, I know that the club values defense and whatever. And that's why Brett Phillips is still playing and whatnot. But Taylor Walls, it's just not hitting. He's still out there playing really good defense, but he is simply not hitting. And they're trying to play Vidal Brujan right now, who is also not hitting, but is playing some defense. So at some point, there's got to be some give and take to that point. So if Paredes can continue to hit if he gets the opportunity, I could see him hanging around a little longer than that. But he's shown what he can do in the minor league level, but has yet to have that stickiness at the major league level. But it was a good week for him. But if you want to speculate on some playing time, this is now the time to do it, especially if they're not going to IL people today. Go ahead and put the cheap spec bid on, see what happens. Maybe Monday they're like, oh, hey, these guys are going to the IL, and all of a sudden it's Paredes week, and he's got a 6-game week with 4 of them coming at Yankee Stadium.
Eric, would you be picking up Paredes?
I would, yeah. I think it depends on your league type. You're taking a flyer, right? Because we don't really know what type of results we're going to get. But I like a lot of the things I'm seeing him do, in his 11 games that he's currently had up in the majors with Tampa. Remember, this is a 23-year-old, and they went out. The articles I was reading, and Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like they targeted him, like they wanted to get him in their organization. And the Rays are a smart organization, so that is something that always kind of intrigues me. And then I'm also seeing he's come up, and it's early, so we don't want to overreact, but he was pulling the ball a lot more in AAA. He's pulling the ball a lot more in the major league level. He's lifting the ball a lot more. His fly ball rate is up. He's hitting the ball hard. Again, super small sample, but 43.5 hard hit rate, 8.7% barrel rate. So you're hitting the ball hard, you're pulling it more, you're lifting it more. Those are things that could lead to a power breakthrough for somebody who's only 23 years old, right? So there is still definite upside for him there. And obviously it's a good lineup. So if he hits well enough to stick in that lineup, he's never really been a high strikeout rate guy through any of his stops in the minor leagues. He makes good contact. So yeah, I'm intrigued by that.
I'm intrigued as well. I've always been a Paredes fan. I had him in a number of dynasty leagues. Do want to point out too that he today is in the lineup playing third base. It's his 10th game playing third base, which means he'll be picking up third base eligibility. He was second base eligible coming into the season in most leagues, which, something Paul and I always talk about is having those guys who are not only multi-position eligible, but can fill more than just those two spots, right? So he can fill second, third, short, and corner on your roster. So, I think he's a guy that, especially in deeper leagues, obviously in 10s and 12s, you're probably not speculating and just kind of watching to see what his playing time situation works out to be if guys go on the IL. But in 15-team leagues, I think he probably should be rostered in the majority of those leagues. And so I would pick him up on kind of a spec pick. And I don't think he's going to cost an extreme amount, especially with other guys that we're going to talk about here next that have come up to the major leagues and are going to go for a lot in FAAB.
Yeah. Also wanted to point out, because I've said it twice now, the games against the Yankees are in fact at Tropicana Field and not Yankee Stadium. So my bad on that.
There we go. So the big one that's going to be available in FAAB in a lot of leagues this week is Adley Rushman, who made his major league debut, started it off by hitting a triple. He's was already being drafted as like a top 15 catcher in most NFBC leagues coming into the season, which means he may not be available in some leagues. Some people have been stashing him. But how aggressive would you be on Rushman, Jason, if he was available in your league?
So watched him last night. Is a little different, but what was so impressive to me is the first at bat was against Jeffrey Springs, and he fouled off a fastball, but then he swung at every changeup Springs threw him, and he barely dinked one foul, but then struck out on a changeup in his first plate appearance. The second plate appearance took a walk and spit on 3 changeups, and these weren't garbage changeups; these were good, right on the fringe of the zone. But he never even flinched at him. He recognized the pitch out of the hands. Knew it, it was like, nope, not do it. And that was just back-to-back plate appearances. So I was extremely impressed by watching that. And the third at bat, it came against Ralph Garza Jr. Came against him, and he ended up tripling down the line. It bounced in the corner, kind of behind the oddness of Camden, because Adley, that may be the only triple of his career. He may never hit another one. But he got one there, but he went down and got it. Went down to a knee on a pitch that he may have swung over, but he was enough pitch recognition, went down, got it, and golfed it out after working through that count. So you can see why everybody's been gaga over this guy for so long with it. And it's not like he's a kid. I mean, yeah, he's got one game of major league experience, but he's 25, if not, he's turning 25 soon. I know he's at least 24. So he has a lot of experience at a premier college program as well. And so he'll be up hitting, probably playing 4 or 5 days a week, maybe 6. Who knows? Who knows how Baltimore is going to play him with that. But I've saw some folks saying he's the top 5 catcher the rest of the way. And frankly, I can't argue with it. After watching 2 games in Camden, because I haven't really watched too many Oriole games, left field is clearly a factor. I mean, you have to hit the absolute snot out of a baseball to pull it out in left field. Now, if you hit left center field, you're fine. But left field, you have to hit a bomb. And like Rosarena hit his second home run yesterday, and it was an absolute cannon off the bat, and it went 4 rows deep. Last year, the outfielder wouldn't even moved. This year, they actually went back like they were going to have a play on the game. So it takes an absolute tank to get it out into left field. So, that's going to be a factor there, but it's all of a sudden you look at that Baltimore lineup and it's got some depth to it now. It's not an easy out. The bullpen is pitching well, and I know you're looking at some of the scores this week. You're like, yeah, but no, they've got signs of progress, and that's what you want to see from a team that's been just god awful for how many years now. So Alex, there's hope. Fast. There's hope there coming. So. I would be aggressive, but it's at the same point, I know you have to kind of temper that, because look at how so many rookies this year have, for the most part, struggled. They haven't met the expectations. Now, fantasy-wise, yeah, it's been nice for all the steals with Julio Rodriguez, and it's been of late that he's starting to hit, but he got off to such a cold start. Same with Bobby Witt Jr. He got off to a really cool start, and he's finally starting. So, you may drop 25-30% of your budget right now, and you may be in for a few weeks of, oh man, I was hoping for more out of this. But again, the bar at catcher's so low. Not much you got to do there, but understand that he's not hitting the ground. He shouldn't hit the ground running. Maybe he does, and I look like an idiot. But I guess the larger point is just what we saw from plate appearance to plate appearance in his first major league game. What left a lasting impression on me.
Eric, how aggressive would you be on Rushman? I mean, this is one of the top prospects in all of baseball.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if he's available in a 2-catcher league, you should be super aggressive because, as Jason talked about, the landscape there is not great. And he's going to, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be up and he's going to be playing. And the upside there makes him incredibly valuable in a 2-catcher league. Though I would also say that, if you're playing in like an NFBC type of format, you definitely don't want to be blowing like 25% of your FAAB on a catcher, in my opinion. I just think that, there are the rookie aspect that Jason's talking about, I think that Rushman is going to be good for a fantasy catcher this year. But, we haven't seen that like MJ Melendez level power in the minors. There's definitely power potential there, right? But I don't know what you're going to get in terms of, there's going to be some batting average ups and downs because he's a rookie and pitchers are going to adjust to him and he's going to have to adjust back. So, I would definitely put a healthy bid on, but I don't want to empty the coffers, for Adley Rutschman. And also, I was just thinking about this. I don't know if I'm alone here. I think that for this season only, we're talking just like redraft leagues. I think I'd rather have MJ Melendez than Adley Rutschman. And I think for me, for fantasy purposes, I think the power, we've seen the power for Melendez, and we've seen that power already start to translate at the major league level. He's hitting the snot out of the ball. I know the results have been ticking up of late, but I think he's like hitting 263 right now, 261. But his barrel rates are ticking up. The hard hit rate is up. When you see him in the box, he looks more comfortable now. He's squaring the ball up. So I think that he's also going to remain in that lineup even when Salvador Perez comes back. And I just think that the power upside for Melendez this year makes me maybe a little bit higher on him just for this season.
I don't think that's like a super hot take necessarily. I do wonder what they do playing time wise once they get healthy again.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. I hope he is an everyday part of that lineup because Melendez is a really, really interesting prospect with that has shown amazing power numbers, especially in the minor leagues. I would be kind of aggressive on Rushman in 2 catcher leagues. Maybe not so much in a 1 catcher league where, there's replacement value at the position and it's maybe not as big of an upgrade. I do think he has the ability to be a top 5 catcher the rest of the season. I don't know that I would say that he will be at this point. I think it's just, that park does not play as favorably as it used to, as Jason mentioned. And so I wonder what the power numbers are going to look like for him in his first go around. That being said, like, especially in a 2 catcher league, like what's coming up from the minor leagues or going to be coming into the league that is really going to be as potentially impactful as a guy like Rushman can be.
Yeah. Nothing, really.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think this becomes obviously team context, right? If you've got 2 usable catchers, you probably don't want to overspend. But more so than that, I really want to look at where I'm at in the standings in certain categories, right? Because what does come in to FAAB somewhat regularly or, throughout the season is saves, right? Guys get hurt, guys get replaced, and, a new closer emerges. We're not having that this week necessarily. But if you're struggling in saves or you're struggling in a category you think you can attain on the wire, and Rushman doesn't fill that category, obviously, with saves, but even if he, doesn't fill a different category, then maybe you don't want to be as aggressive on him so you have the FAAB to go after those pieces later. So I would be willing he's not available in any of my leagues. In all my NFBC leagues, he's already rostered. I have him stashed in Tout, and in my other leagues are dynasties. Of course, he's rostered in those leagues as well. But if I was in a position where I needed a catcher, Adley's on the wire there, and I'm able to bid. Yeah, I think I'm going 25%, maybe even at least, of my remaining FAAB to go get a potential huge upgrade at a position that is pretty weak around the league in general.
Fair.
Jason, did you chime in? I can't remember.
I did not. I already talked. I already talked. I said where I was on.
All right.
Yeah.
I talked for so long, I forgot whether you had talked or not. The other big prize is going to be Nolan Gorman, who made his major league debut, got a hit in it. Eric, what are your thoughts on Gorman? Is he a guy you would empty the coffers for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I like Gorman. I think obviously we've seen, the huge power explosion from him in the minors this year. I think, we've seen, the Cardinals are hitting him second today because this game started like 11:30 Eastern time. He's already 2 for 2 with an RBI. But it's like right up and right into the middle of a good lineup. And obviously, for today's game, Goldschmidt isn't in the lineup, so they tend to kind of he will hit at the top of that lineup as well. But it's a good lineup. He's going to hit in the middle of it or near the top of it. I think the hit tool is real. So I really like the potential upside for Gorman. I think there are going to be struggles. It just goes back to like what Jason was saying. There's a decent amount of swing and miss in his game, and he's a rookie at the major league level, and it's hard to make those adjustments. So there are going to be some cold stretches for Nolan Gorman because of the swing and miss in his profile. Hitters are going to take advantage. So I think that you need to, bid with the expectation that it's not going to be just smooth sailing for the whole rest of the season. But I think the upside with him is legit. And I think that, they called him up with the hopes that he's up for good. This isn't like a Jose Miranda situation where he might be going down at any second right now. So yeah, I mean, especially in comparison to the last FAAB we had with like Juan Yepes and Jose Miranda and Royce Lewis, like I would be bidding much higher on Gorman than any of those guys.
Jason, where are you at on Gorman? Is this guy you're going to get aggressive on?
So he's been on my radar since last winter. When Ian Kahn and I were talking, he's like, "Hey, what do you think about Nolan Gorman for this coming season? Like, I'm hearing they're moving him to the infield to play second base." And I was like, "That's interesting." And obviously, it's like you see a lot of highlights, and I know that Shelly has tweeted out some lines every time she'll have a line in there about Gorman. You can see some of the videos, and I mean the power is legit. And the only thing that concerns me though is just that he was striking out quite a bit at AAA. And so he's already, like Eric said, he's already got 2 hits today, drove in a run with a double to the gap. So we know what his bat's capable of, but it wouldn't surprise me if he gets on the struggle bus just because of the issues he had with strikeouts in the minor leagues. But if it comes with the 15 home runs he hit while in Memphis, who cares? Enjoy the ride. With it. And so he's in a good spot in the lineup, and as long as he can continue to hit, and let's not forget, this is a team that has shown a willingness to carry guys like this. I mean, Tyler O'Neill pretty much stayed in the lineup around all of his struggles too, unless he pulls a Paul DeYoung and just cannot hit, and just that's your exit ticket if he gets in DeYoung territory. But as they've shown, they're willing to live with strikeouts as long as the production's there.
Well, I mean, there is one huge difference between Tyler O'Neill and Gorman. I mean, outside of obviously a major league track record for O'Neill, he's a really, really good defender, which Gorman is not. At least he does not grade out to be a really good defender. I like Gorman a lot. I've got Gorman, I think, in every dynasty league that I'm in. And he's been a guy that I took in DCs coming into the year. There is a ton of risk here, though. And Paul and I won't go too deep into it because Paul and I did talk about Gorman on Friday's episode after it was announced that he was being called up. But there is Josh Lowian risk in what happened with Lowe. Struck out too much, got sent down. There's also huge upside. I mean, Jason mentioned the 15 home runs. It was in 34 games, those 15 home runs. Also stole 3 bases in that time. Hit for a good average. Like, there is a ton of upside here. There's also a ton of downside. So you need to know that if you're going to blow a bunch of FAAB, which I'm going to try to do in a number of leagues this week, so I'm not saying don't do it, that it could be completely wasted capital, right? You could, there were people who spent $500 in FAAB in the first week of the season on Josh Lowe. That never got anything out of it except for bad statistics in their lineup weekly. So I think Gorman's going to be better than that. I do believe in the tool a little bit more than I do in Lowe's. And there's clearly real power in a really good lineup and a decent division to hit in when you're going up against Reds and Pirates pitchers and Cubs pitchers on a regular basis. So That being said, there's a ton of risk. This is not he is a top tier prospect, but he is not one that has the safe kind of floor that maybe other guys did when they came up.
And I got to be honest. You said Josh Loyan. I was like, I've never heard of that prospect before. Who is that? Oh, Josh. I had this moment. I'm like, who is this guy?
Well, and there. Oh, I was just gonna say, we've had guys who we thought had really, really safe floors in recent years. Jared Kelenic comes to mind.
Oh man,
that haven't, right? And so when you look at a prospect like Gorman, who's got great upside, but doesn't have an inherent safe floor, that should be really scary. So I don't mind people getting aggressive. Like I said, I'm probably going to get aggressive in a few leagues, especially leagues where I need help. But there is a ton of risk here.
Yeah. I just wanted to also, while we're on the Cardinals, do a little shout out to, I also think that like a small bid, I still think Brendan Donovan remains relevant and interesting. The Cardinals played him in right field today. They hit him fifth. He's 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs. So far in the last week, he is DH'd, played third, played short, and played right field. So, this is another rookie whose plate discipline skills have been really impressive early in the season, stole 19 bases across 3 levels last year. And I think they clearly want him to remain in the lineup because they're moving him all over the place. So this is another one where if you're like in a 15-team league, I just think this is another opportunity to get some exposure to this lineup. And I picked him up last week and was worried I was going to cut him when Gorman came up. And I think I'm going to hold on for another week because, they clearly want to keep him in the lineup. So just a name for people to keep in mind as well.
Very good point. Let's move over to the pitching side. Chase Silseth. And if you're wondering who that is, don't be too down on yourself because I had no idea who this guy was until recently. But he's come up, made 2 starts for the Angels, won 1 and lost 1. But 10 innings, 10 1/3 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts, 2.61 ERA. Eric, is this a guy that you'd be interested in grabbing in FAAB this week?
Potentially not this week. I do really like Chase Silseth. I watched both starts. Unfortunately, I started him against the Athletics in the second start, which didn't go so well. But it was primarily connected to the long ball. So, he's got good velocity. He can get it up to like 96, 97. The split finger he throws is legitimately a nasty pitch. But he, even with his 2 major league starts, has made 10 professional starts. So this is a guy with not a lot of experience in professional baseball. There's going to be ups and downs. I just double checked, and next week he starts against Toronto, so I'm not touching that. So I won't be picking him up this week. I think that Silseth is a guy who is really intriguing in keeper and dynasty leagues because I think the swing and miss in his arsenal is legitimate, and that splitter can work as a really good pitch. But I'm not going to – I just think he winds up being a streamer for this year. And you're not streaming a guy against the Toronto Blue Jays. So in that sense, he's out for me for this upcoming week. Jason,
where are you at on Silseth?
I have him already. I picked him up either last scoring period or the period before, specking out, and so it's worked out decently. I mean, the game against Oakland was not what I was expecting, but one of the things I was trying to do was I wanted to look at something because I know maybe it's because I follow too many Toronto writers. I know Toronto is just. They're really upset. Like the fan base and folks are really upset about how things have been going of late. And offensively, I forgot who wrote the great article. I'm drawing. If you're listening to this, you wrote this article. Apologies, I'm forgetting. Somebody wrote a great article about how the league has seemingly figured out the Jays.
Oh, I
was it Justin Choi?
No, it was a Toronto writer.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Blake Murphy. That's who it was.
Yeah.
He DM'd me about something else the other day. It was Blake. And so he's one of the ones that's been tweeting out. But Toronto was 27th this month in OPS as team, and that's just when you consider what's on their team and the fact that they're hitting 219 as a team. So I'm not that scared of them right now, of their potential. The fear, as we used to joke around, the fear of Toronto is certainly there. But the reality is they've not been a good hitting team this month. Now that could turn around in a dime. It would stink. They're like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and take them. And they go out and they realize, oh, yeah, we're really good. And he gets pounded. So that would stink. But I would not, I bring this up just because, as you're trying to set your lineups, take a look. Toronto's on the struggle bus offensively right now. Enjoy it while you can, because that's not going to last. It just can't. And so that's where I would stick with Silseth at least another week here, only because I have him and he's going to be in my lineup, because I want to see how much longer this can go on. But they're having some struggles, and if I can find that article from Blake, I'll send it to you so you can put it in the notes, because it was a really good read. I enjoyed reading it.
I read it as well. It was a good article. I'm trying to figure out what his next start. There it is. His next start after Toronto is going to be at Philadelphia. And we have to remember too, the Angels run a 6-man rotation. So it's rare, if ever, that you're going to get a 2-start week from Silseth. I agree with Eric's kind of assessment. I like the kind of future upside. But they kind of have a brutal schedule. His next start is at Toronto. He's going to miss the at New York, but then it looks like Philadelphia and then Boston are going to be the 2 starts after that. I don't love the way that kind of matches up. And I don't want to spend FAAB on a guy who's going to have that kind of schedule in the near future, because who knows how long he's going to be up for if there are struggles like this. So
it's just mistakes theory for me today, by the way. It was also a video, not an article, but I did enjoy it. That's it. I just put it in the thing. So he's got a really nice break. It's called The Breakdown. But I just put the tweet in it. And I remember watching this, I think on Friday morning or Thursday morning. I was like, that's insightful. I would like to see more of these.
He did a follow-up piece to it too, I think, though.
Great. I just found the video and I was like, I remember
I'll see if I can find it.
Oh, hey, look. Okay.
I'll see if I can find the follow-up piece to it as well. So,
Blake, if you're listening, apologies, dude.
Blake's awesome. So, moving on to the next guy, we have Christian Walker. And some people who play in deeper leagues like, well, Christian Walker is not available. He's available in like 70% of CBS leagues, which caters to 12-team leagues right now, which is insanity. And available, I think, in around 50% of online championship leagues. So, check your wire, but he has been hot as heck so far early in the season, kind of looking like a vintage version of himself in a year where he was kind of forgotten in a lot of drafts. Jason, where are you out on Christian Walker? Is this a guy you're running to the wire to pick up in your 10s and 12s?
Well, I mean, some of this obviously was inflated by the 25-mile-an-hour windblown game in Wrigley. He had 2 bombs in that game, right? Or did he have 2? Because I know Josh Rojas had 3.
Rojas had 3. Peralta had 2. I think Walker maybe just had 1.
Just one.
Check that. He had just had 1. Okay. So I'm looking at his numbers over the last 30 days. He's 223, 298, 515 over the last 30 days, but that still puts him in the top 50 because that's where offense is these days. So he's still in the top 50 of qualified hitters for things. And he's somebody that plays every day. So I'm honestly surprised to hear his availability given his potential, because again, he's out there every day. He's shown power potential. We know he's shown it. I mean, not potential. He has shown power production, and we know what he's capable of. And so I'm surprised he would be hanging out there in that percentage of leagues. But again, over the last 30 days, again, people see those numbers. They may be like, but that's what it is. The league average OPS over the past 30 days is 736, and he's at 812. So he's above average, even though the numbers don't look good. That is still above average in this current environment.
I'm gonna correct my mistake, and I mean I'm sure it's moved since I wrote this up, but he's only available now in 56% of CBS leagues. It's still more than half. So go and check out your wires. Eric, what are your thoughts on Christian Walker? Do you think this kind of power boom is sustainable for him?
Yeah, I actually had him in pretty much all of my NFBC lineups that I roster him in this week, just because I was, the underlying metrics were telling us that there was going to be a little bit of a power explosion because he's hitting the ball really hard. And this week, definitely worked in favor of that. And I think that there are a lot of people who probably have him rostered and maybe aren't playing him because, he's hitting 201 on the season. And so you look at some of these like surface level stats and you're like, prior to this week where now he has 10 home runs and you love that. But his batting average is really low. He is on a team, that doesn't have a great offense. So like he has 10 home runs and 19 RBIs. So it's not like he's driving in huge chunk runs, but the 15.6% barrel rate, 48.6% hard hit rate, just this week, he was second in all of baseball in home runs this week. He was in the top 15 in barrel rate this week. Like the dude is hitting the ball hard. He has a 192 BABIP. Like that is going to regress. He's a 294 career BABIP hitter. So like the batting average is gonna tick up because he's hitting the ball so hard. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested in any league where he's available. I'm trying to roster him if I can.
You're already starting to see it in the May numbers. He's in 261 during the month of May. That BABIP is up to 255. 6 home runs, 12 RBIs, a 12.5% walk rate while only striking out 20% of the time. He's doing this by swinging outside of the zone less and just making really good contact within the zone. I think this is completely legitimate. You kind of wonder like how much of the struggles, last year were injury related. He was a guy who was kind of nicked up quite a bit. So, this is kind of perfect for Arizona too, right? I mean, they're trying to compete right now, but I don't think they've got the talent to do so. And Walker will be an attractive trade piece at the deadline, which means he's going to end up likely on a better team and most likely a better park because Arizona is not the best park for hitting. So, I like Christian Walker a lot. I'm surprised he is available in as many leagues as he is. This is a mistake. It's people not wanting to drop their higher drafted assets this early into the season, but you should be doing that and picking up Christian Walker if he's available in your league or going and trading for him in your trade leagues where he's still showing like a 201 batting average for the season or something like that. Yeah, 201 batting average for the season. So go and see if you can try to get him a little bit cheaper than he may be 2 or 3 weeks from now when that average is boosted back up by what he's been doing, especially over the course of this month. The next guy I want to talk about is Eli White. This is probably more of a deep league play, but Eli White is doing what Eli White does, and that is steal bases. And on a bad Rangers team where he's going to likely get a fair amount of playing time moving forward, how aggressive would you be on Eli White, Jason?
So it's funny you bring him up because I was texting last night with our friend Yancy Eaton, and I forgot how Eli White came up, and he goes, "Oh, I like Eli White." I'm like, maybe we're talking about Ruben Mateo, and I was like, you do realize that White has like the second or third highest sprint speed right now in baseball, and he's like, "That real?" I'm like, "That's real." And so it's Bobby Witt Jr. and then it's Eli White, and then it's Ruben Mateo. So as fast as Mateo is, White is the next guy. But the other reason why is a couple of weeks ago when Willie Calhoun got sent down at AL labor rather, I had no option. I had nobody else. And then Rick and Glenn were like, "Hey, we'll trade Eli White for a reservable or an injured pitcher." And at the time, I had Jeffrey Springs, who had just come off the IL. I don't know, I'm having troubles in offense in that league, but I had a lot of pitching. And so I was like, well, hey, Springs doesn't need to come off the IL for another week. Let's do that trade. And so it's worked out well for both teams because, they've got Springs has been pitching progressively better, looked fantastic yesterday against Baltimore. And I've gotten the steals that I need out of White. Now, White hasn't hit much. I think he's hit 190 this month, but when he's on base, he's running. He has 6 stolen bases this month. And I could use any offensive production I can get. So I wasn't getting him expecting anything more than steals. And he certainly has helped me in that category. So, you look at some of the other things that they've done in that organization. They just demoted Nick Solak, who I didn't realize even had options. It feels like he's been up and down for 6 seasons now. But they sent Nick Solak down. They already sent Willie Calhoun down. And so it's like White, could continue to play or pinch run and steal bases type of thing. And so in a deeper format, he's not. I don't know how he's rosterable in a mixed league unless you're in a very, very deep one, or you've got enough power to absorb that kind of Billy Hamilton profile right now. But in an AL only, like I'm in 2 of them or 3 of them, he's somebody that I would want to have on my roster because he's running right now, and Chris Woodward's given the opportunity to do so. I think he's been on base 15 times between walks and singles. He has 1 extra base hit this month. He had a home run. But when he is on first base, either via the walk or via the single, almost half the time he's in motion, and that's a good thing.
Eric, any interest in Eli White?
I'm going to be more tepid. I think I understand Jason's point in AL only leagues, and I fully agree with it. This is a guy who's hitting 207, even though he's rocking a 324 BABIP. He has a 34% strikeout rate. So the speed is real. The hitting profile is not good. And then, our old friend Leody Taveras is hitting 319 in AAA for Texas. Listen, that's still also a problematic plate profile. He's got a 24% strikeout rate and 6% walk rate. But, through 33 games in AAA, he's hitting 319 with 5 home runs, 6 stolen bases. He was a big-time prospect for the Rangers. If there's one thing we know Leody Taveras can do, it's also run. So if all you're getting from Eli White after the next few weeks is stolen bases, but with a really poor batting average and a lot of strikeouts, the Rangers may just say, we can get the same thing out of Leody Taveras. And if he's still hitting, in the mid 300s in AAA, by, the middle of June or whatever, I'm also not ruling out that they give him another shot. At some point, they need to determine if he's going to wind up being a thing or not for them. Taveras is only 23 years old, so he's still a young prospect. So, I think if you really need steals, I'm not opposed to putting a smallish bid on Eli White because we know that when he gets on base, he's running. I just don't know in mixed leagues, even if you're in a deep mixed league, I don't necessarily feel so confident in the runway that I think, if he continues to struggle for the next couple of weeks, then I don't know that he's definitely locked into, playing time for them. And there are some weeks where he stole 1 base this week, which is fine. But when you're not getting on, you can't run.
He also stole it the first game of the week.
Right, exactly.
Because Shelly and I picked him up in the tag team league, and I was all like, put him in the lineup. And Shelly was the one who kind of advocated for him. I was like, great. Let's try to get some stolen bases here. Got a stolen base in it might have been his first time on base. I think it was his first time on base this week, and then has not. I don't even know if he's gotten on base since. If he has, I don't think it was via a hit. It might have been via walk because he's hit I think 100 this week or something like that. Unfortunately, the underlying skills outside of the speed are atrocious. He's got a 68% zone contact right now. He strikes out a ton. The strikeout rate is supported by just an awful swing strike rate. Swings outside of the zone way too much. This is bad Billy Hamilton. If you're looking for a cheap speed play in the deeper league, I understand it because he is tied for 6th in Major League Baseball in stolen bases right now. I just don't understand how the Rangers will be able to continue to run him out there when they do have other options in the minor leagues that, like Eric just said, they should be figuring out if these guys are part of the long-term plans or not. I understand, wanting guys to get full-time reps in the minor leagues, but when you're running out guys like, Eli White, and I love Brad Miller, but why is Brad Miller playing over these guys on a rebuilding team when they should be finding out if Nick Solak, you're on mute, Jason, Leody Taveras, and these guys
Texas give him a multi-year deal? I thought Brad Miller got 2 years.
Oh God!
If they gave him 2 years, that would explain why he's playing every day, or if he's playing against righties.
They did give him a 2 years.
Okay. There you go. That's why.
I also I asked James Anderson about this when I talked to him on our my podcast too. But I also look at the Rangers have Bubba Thompson in AAA who's stolen 20 bases already in 30 games. Granted, he has a 1.4% walk rate and a 29.3% strikeout rate. So the Rangers really love these speedy outfielders with just awful plate discipline profiles. But there are a lot of former top prospects in that same mold within the organization that I do feel like if that winds up being the only thing they get from Eli White, it's let's try Leody Taveras. Let's try, Bubba Thompson, who's a former first-round pick. They may go that route, like Justin was saying, when they're not fully competitive and just say, okay, are any of these guys going to be anything? And just try to see if, they can catch lightning in a bottle with one of these guys who make some improvements and sticks.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Eli White and Cole Calhoun as your corner outfielders, we're clearly not going to be a part of the next great Rangers team. I think you can make that argument for Adolis Garcia as well, in spite of what he brought to the team last year. He's 29. He's not probably part of the next good Rangers team. Why not find out if Nick Solak and Willie Calhoun and Leody Taveras are major league players and are going to be a part of that next great team. They've also got Sharon Apostle just wasting away in AAA as well. So I don't know what the Rangers are doing, but I'm not super interested in Eli White moving forward unless you're just desperate for stolen bases. Next guy is Brady Singer, who I believe has a pretty decent 2-start. I'm going to double check.
No, he's actually starting today. They called him up to start today.
Well, that changes things. What are your thoughts, though, Eric, on Brady Singer?
I think, obviously, just to get the obvious out of the way, a lot will depend on the start today. Mm-hmm. The start against the White Sox early in the week, I think it was on Tuesday, was really good. 38% whiff rate, 43% CSW. He struck out 9 in 7 shutout innings. So anytime you see that, you're like, oh, okay, I want to take note. But, this is a former top prospect who, like almost all of the Royals' former top pitching prospects, has seemed to, go stagnant at the major league level. He does not have a swing and miss fastball. It's a sinker that pitches to contact. He does spot it well. So he got a lot of called strikes against the White Sox. The slider was great against the White Sox, but he puts a lot of pressure on that slider because the sinker is really just a location pitch for him. So I'm trying not to get overly optimistic about one start. What I did notice, which could be intriguing, and what I'll watch today, is he threw the changeup way more against the White Sox than he was throwing it earlier in the season. And obviously that's a little bit impacted by the fact that he started and they moved him for the bullpen for a little bit. Then they sent him down. So when he was in the bullpen, he was not throwing 3 pitches as much. But the changeup was really good for him against the White Sox. So if he goes out again on Sunday and is throwing 3 true pitches and the slider and the changeup are both missing bats, then I feel less concerned about the fact that his sinker is really just a ground ball location pitch. And then I become a little bit more optimistic. But, today is against the Twins, and Correa is on the bench. So then you're kind of like, okay, I don't want to overreact to a start against a very mediocre Twins offense.
I will say this, his start later in the week is against the Twins as well.
Okay.
And it's going to be at home, which I believe today is on the road. So better pitching in Kauffman Stadium, going to go face the same team that he's going up against today if he stays in the rotation. Jason, what are your thoughts on Brady Singer?
I mean, he looked very good against the White Sox, and you go to his StatCast page, you see a bunch of red ink right now. If it had been a 2-start week, it'd be, that'd be interesting. And as Eric said, with the mediocre Twins offense, and part of that was weird. Wasn't on my end.
No, that was somebody is. I'll mute myself. Somebody's revving a motorcycle outside my window.
Oh, I was like, what dropped? And like Buxton has, since he's been trying to play through this hip issue, has not been well since he came back from not going on the IL. Just take a couple of days off. Maybe we should put a pin back in that one with that. But he struggled there. So yeah, it'd be worth, as you said, he's got, sometimes it's a little risky going with the same guy, going with a guy who's got 2 matchups against the same team back to back like that. But what Springer did against the White Sox certainly made us sit up and take notice. I mean, because that's 7 shutout, 9 strikeouts, and we know not like Eric said, though, we've seen this before from Kansas City, who's just had a tough time getting guys who make it to the majors and then live up to their reputation. That's always been my fear. We've often talked on this show about, Milwaukee's got a good guy. Eric opened about talking about how he wrote up Eric Lauer. And it's like Eric Lauer was so terrible with San Diego, and Milwaukee's like, here, let me have you. We're going to do something. Wham. And here they go. So we have trust in organizations like Milwaukee about turning things into pitchers, turning pitchers into something rather. And conversely, we look at Kansas City. We're like, what's your track record? And their fans are clamoring for Cal Eldred to get canned. When they fired Terry Bradshaw, they're like, all right, great, now do Cal Eldred. And Cal Eldred is still there for whatever reason.
Yeah, I've been a singer guy in the past and gotten burned, and so this is a really difficult one for me. He did look really good, like you guys mentioned, in that White Sox start. I think I'm rolling with him and throwing some bids on him if he looks good today, like you guys mentioned. So that Minnesota team has its moments, but it still it has not been great offensively outside of what Buxton has previously done. So I think I would roll with him, but I might be a little bit more interested in our next guy, which is James Kaprielian, who does have a 2 start. And the reason why he is on this, he's going to be at Seattle and then home in Oakland versus Texas. Jason, what are your thoughts on James Kaprielian, who after a rough first go in his first game at the majors this year has been really, really good in his last 3 starts, going at least 5 innings in each of them, and has a 2.81 ERA in that span.
Yeah, I'd be aggressive if he's still available in your league. With on paper, he's got Seattle and Texas this week too. We've already talked about Texas and Seattle's struggling. Their offense. I mean, yeah, they signed Justin Upton. We'll talk a little bit more about Seattle, but their offense has been struggling too. So on paper, these are great matchups for Kaprielian. So if you're somebody who has a spot in your roster where you're continuing to stream guys and he is available, this should likely be your primary target because he's got the really, really nice 2-start week. And he's somebody you can, as you said, he's been pitching well up to this point. And so this isn't something that I'm going to take him for the 2 and then move on to the next option. You can keep him around with that. Or if he stinks, you can cut him. You've got the flexibility. But when you look at what's on slate this week, for the 2-start week, like last week, we talked about a number of these 2-start guys. This isn't like a Wade Miley situation, which worked out really well. Yay. But there were a couple other guys that we said, oh, hey, this will, and it hasn't with that. So, with Kaprielian, primary target in leagues where he's still sitting around for this weekend and the near future.
Eric, where are you at on Kaprielian? You're on mute.
The motorcycle's gone.
Sorry, the motorcycle's gone, so I can get unmute myself. I'm with Jason in the sense that I think that he's a priority if you're looking for a 2-start this week. I echo what Jason's saying about the offenses that he's facing. I'm a little cautious that like the 3 starts that he had that were good were Minnesota, Detroit, Minnesota. Detroit's one of the worst offenses in baseball right now.
Sorry, Paul.
And yeah, sorry. I will say, hopefully Paul has a nice summer with them, because I, coming into the year, thought that they'd be a surprise playoff contender because I did like a lot of the pieces in their lineup. But it hasn't clicked. Kaprelian really just uses the four seam and the slider. I do like that he's using the slider way more this year, and the slider has been a pretty good pitch for him. And he's actually throwing the slider 2 miles an hour faster than he did in years past, even though the fastball velocity is only up a little bit more. So that's something that might be worth digging into, is like, what changes has he made to the slider? Because it's been lights out for him currently this year. So I like that. I would be concerned a little bit long-term, because I think that really he just has the slider and the rest of the profile doesn't really intrigue me. So I like it for this week. I personally would be looking at him as a week-to-week guy, depending on matchups. 2-start, great, and he might be the guy I cut next week for another 2-start guy.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because as much as I've liked Kaprelian in the past, I look over it as like a StatCast page. It is pretty blue. And so I think he's more of a matchups dependent guy. This is a great week to, take advantage of those matchups like Jason mentioned. But I do worry about the long-term viability, especially as things start to heat up in Oakland. I mean, it's still going to play well as a pitcher's park, but I think more things will head out of there as the season goes on. So like him for the short term, I wouldn't be overly aggressive unless you are planning on making him a team streamer. I don't know that I would do that necessarily yet, though. The next guy, once again, I believe he has a 2-start, is Tucker Davidson. He is he's home versus the Phillies, and then home versus the Marlins on Saturday. Where are you at on Tucker Davidson? Is this too risky of an early week matchup to try to get that 2-start, Eric?
Yeah, I actually, I tried my hand at a little a Substack thing this week, and I sent out something this morning on Twitter that I called the Samulski Sunday Tribune, looking at like last week's leaders in certain categories, and then I ranked all of the 2-start pitchers. And I have like Tucker Davidson down below, like, Dylan Bundy and Zach Davies and guys like that. Just because, I'm super worried about the first start. This is a guy who was missing bats in AAA, but was also, getting hit relatively hard and had pretty middling results in AAA. We talked about James Kaprelian being essentially just a slider-only pitcher, and that's basically Tucker Davidson. He throws his fastball and slider essentially 90% of the time combined, and his four-seam gets, so far this year, it's small sample size, but his four-seam has been getting crushed. So he's really just a slider pitcher. I know we saw Kyle Wright kind of emerge for the Braves as like a one-time hot prospect who then struggled, who now is back. And Tucker Davidson was a one-time hot prospect who struggled, but I don't necessarily think that he's back. I'm a little bit worried, and I think that those matchups are not great.
Where are you at on Davidson, Jason?
Right in the same area as Eric is. It's, I'm of what we've talked about earlier. I still want Kaprelian much more than this. I would put Davidson more. Last week I was confident, like, hey, give me Wade Miley. Like, I'm not that confident going after Davidson this week. That Philly matchup really scares me. The Miami one's more neutral, but that Philly one could get ugly. And they have put a hurting. After what, I'm still super impressed what they did against the Dodgers recently. The club's hitting and the Phillies, and I really don't want that Davidson start there. So I'm out this week.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. So I won't rehash everything you already said, because we're already over an hour, and I want to finish up with kind of the mess in Seattle. Kyle Lewis is expected to be activated tomorrow if he's not activated tonight. So he is going to be available in a lot of FAAB leagues, and probably flies under the radar in a number of leagues. So I'm wondering how aggressive you guys would be. Jason, what are your thoughts on Kyle Lewis, poised to make his debut this season after starting the year with injury? for Seattle tomorrow.
Yeah, I have him in one of my drafting holds, so I'm excited to be able to finally use them with that. And, they've made like I said, the team has struggled offensively last year. Yeah, they had so much success in those one-run games. This year, they're just not playing many one-run games because they're not scoring runs. Ty France is doing a decent job. As we mentioned earlier, Julio Rodriguez has finally started hitting and it's not striking out like 2 out of every 3 plate appearances with that. But overall, they're struggling to put offense together. But I mean, you've seen some signs of life. Kyle Lewis, he's got the power speed combo, but injuries have always gotten in his way. But again, I'm excited to use him here. I would be moderately aggressive with him. Because when he comes in the lineup, he should be right in the middle. It's not like he's going to be hanging down there at the bottom. He's not going to be up high, but they did just lose Abraham Toro to the IL as well. And so there's a spot for him sitting right there in the middle of the lineup. And if that team can get going, he could be a catalyst.
Eric, where are you out on Kyle Lewis? Is he a guy you're going to go after this week?
Yeah, I'll put some tempered bids in on him because, as Jason mentioned, injuries have always gotten in the way. And I don't want to bank on injuries. I'm not going to say, hey, Kyle Lewis is definitely going to get hurt this year. But I also think you need to factor that in when you are making a bid on a player is like, I might get 3 weeks of production, 4 weeks of production, and then that it might not last. But he did a lot of things last year that were really intriguing to me. And albeit he only played 36 games, so it's a small sample size. But he improved the strikeout rate for the second year in a row in the major leagues. He had started to pull the ball way more last year. He'd started to lift the ball way more last year. His barrel rates have always been really strong. So, you've got a young guy pulling hard contact and lifting hard contact should lead to a little bit more power. We obviously didn't get to see that play out last year because he didn't make it through the season. Doing well in AAA on his rehab right now, hitting 324 with 3 home runs, 12 RBIs. He's got a 1.057 OPS. Again, it's AAA, so, we don't want to just extrapolate that out, but it's nice that he is swinging the bat well currently. And, they, as Jason said, they need him right now. So I think, he's going to play. I would imagine they're pretty judicious with some days off here and there so they don't run him into the ground. But if you're in a deep league, if you're in a 15-team league, I think he's got the upside that's worth rostering. And if you're in a 12-team and you have a spot on your bench that somebody isn't really really doing it for you, like he could be a guy you throw on the bench. You don't play him this week, but he's there as an upside play if you have somebody that you think you're happy to get rid of. I'm intrigued by him.
Yeah, I love Kyle Lewis and have for a really long time. The problem has been injuries, and it's been absolutely brutal. I mean, this guy has just not been able to stay healthy. I think people forget he was like a top 25 prospect in all of baseball at one point in the minor leagues, but injuries have just derailed that prospect pedigree and then derailed him even after a real nice start to his major league career. He's one of those guys, if you could turn off injuries like you can in MLB The Show, like he would be a superstar, I think. And I think he still has that potential in him. We've seen guys who get that injury prone moniker shake it off at some point in their career. I don't think he's there yet, obviously, considering he's coming off of injury right now, but I think he should be rostered in just about every format. I think he's got that kind of talent. The Mariners hopefully will do a good job of trying to protect him by letting him DH mostly. But they may be forced to play him in the outfield if other guys get healthy and they want to try to figure out ways to get him in the lineup. So I am going to throw some tempered bids similar to Eric, just because I don't want to blow triple digits worth of FAAB on a guy that could next week could be back on the IL because of his health history. So I'm hoping he flies under the radar in a number of leagues. In some leagues, he will not be available if you play in NFBC and he was not drafted. He will not be available this week. So just keep an eye out on that. In leagues where he needs to have made his debut for the season already, he may not be available.
It's always good to keep scrolling down and check. Like I picked up O'Neal Cruz last week for $3 in a league. Somebody drafted him and cut him, so he's available. And I had a spot to burn, and I was like, "Hey, this maybe fingers crossed Pittsburgh will call him up at some point. Who knows? But it's always worth, you forget who was drafted. And honestly, I forgot. I was just kind of scrolling through and I was like, oh my goodness, look who's sitting there. And I was the only bid.
Well, and this is why I like the player search function on NFBC. Not when you're in your league, but at the top right-hand corner, you can click. They have a tab on each player pages to let you know where they're available in FAAB. So in all of your leagues. So if you're like me and you play in a bunch of leagues, you can click that tab and find all the spots and even put bids on that page as well. So, but definitely check your league to see if Kyle Lewis is available. Because I think he is, like I said, one of those guys that if people are searching by plate appearances or by at bats, he's not gonna pop up because he hasn't played yet this year. And I don't think he's the kind of star that people are remembering might be coming back. So I would definitely put at least some cursory bids on him to try to get him for cheap. That is going to wrap us up for this episode. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. I have a blast. I always love this as one of those bucket list podcasts. So I'm always happy to be on here.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. I'll remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug everything you got going on.
Yeah, so you can reach me on social media on Twitter at SamskiNYC. You can check out all my fantasy content over at rotoballer.com. Early next week, I will have the next installment of pitchers with new pitches and should we care, looking at, in particular, Tyler Mahle and Framber Valdez's new cutter, which is Luis Garcia's cutter, basically. So we'll be digging into that kind of stuff. And my video on Eric Lauer is currently up on the Rotoballer YouTube page, and you can also find that on my Twitter account. So go check that out.
Well, that is what we'll be doing first after we end this podcast, of going to watch that Eric Lauer video. It's because he is carrying our pitching staff in the tag team league, thanks to Shelly helping us target him in at the end of the draft. Jason, where can you be reached, and what are you working on?
At Jason Collette on Twitter, article coming out on RotoWire about folks about RBIs. Essentially, there are some guys that are way over their skis on you look at their RBI production this year, because as we've often said, RBI is a skill of opportunity. For example, going into play Thursday, Andres Jimenez was leading the league with batting average with runners in scoring position, hitting like 462. That's why he has 19 RBIs in the season. But like volume wise, there are guys out there that are leaving a bunch of production on the table. And, everybody has Juan Soto's like, yeah, I know I have Juan Soto. The fact that, like, as of Thursday, he had driven in 3 runners all season. He had 8 solo shots, and he had 3 other RBIs. So he had driven in only 3 times he had driven in somebody other than himself. But there were other guys in that list. Nobody's trading Juan Soto, but Jonathan Scope, who's got a history of run productions on that same list. Joey Gallo was on that list. We saw what Bobby Dahlbeck did this past summer once he got hot. So, there's a lot of names sitting on that list of underproducing, leaving opportunities on the table that I figured we should put some spotlight on. Like, hey, maybe go get some of these guys on the cheap right now.
Man, froze mid sign off.
There we go.
Conversely,
it's the cliffhanger. So I was gonna say it's the cliffhanger for your article. You're like, and I'm gonna leave it there. Go check it out.
This is the crazy thing too is I'm tethered. It's not like I'm crappy Wi-Fi. I cannot wait till Google Fiber's done being installed in my neighborhood so I can get it. Anywho, so it's like some guys that are overperforming. I believe on the top of the list was like Rowdy Tellez, who has made the absolute most of his opportunities. So things like that. That should be hitting the website on Monday.
You can follow me on Twitter at Mason FWFB. You can read my work where I'm writing daily over at Fangraphs. Also on the TGFBI podcast and the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. That is going to wrap us up for this episode. For Eric, Jason, and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.